Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Guns N' Roses Central, and this is pretty much my final video before heading off for vacation. So there'll still be some more news videos in the coming weeks, but it's mostly just old news that I just haven't posted on my channel just because it's not time sensitive. So the first piece of news concerns Eddie Trunk. If you guys remember, Eddie Trunk has been talking on his radio show the last year or so about trying to get an exclusive interview with Axl Rose, or really any of the guys from Guns N' Roses. He's interviewed Steven Adler before. That interview's up on my channel if you guys want to go check it out. And he said he met Axl, I think it was last year at the Vegas shows, or at least at one of the Vegas shows, and there's a picture of him with Axl. And basically he said that Axl promised him he would come on the show. And today a fan on Twitter asked basically Eddie Trunk if there's any word on Axl coming on and doing a show. And Eddie said, no, he's been asking and just basically waiting. So it was kind of funny because Eddie Trunk sort of had this attitude like, oh yeah, Axl's going to do my show first out of any other press out there. And sure enough, Axl goes on Brazilian TV and does the interview. And there's also, a couple interviews Eddie Trunk's done before with Axl. Probably the best known is that 2006 interview where Sebastian Bach was on as well, and Axl just walked in the studio and they talked for something like 2 hours. And then he also interviewed Axl back in 2011 on that metal show. Now, there was some controversy surrounding that interview because Eddie told a story, which I've linked to down below on YouTube, that, they talked to Guns N' Roses management. Guns were kicking off a tour, and they wanted some publicity. And at that time, I guess Guns N' Roses manager, I'm not sure if it was Doc McGee at that point, but basically said that they can't guarantee Axl will do the interview. And basically, Axl wasn't even told about the interview until he walked on the set. And it was around 5:30 in the morning, and Eddie Trunk said he was totally fried when they did that interview, and it was kind of awkward doing it as well. And I think Axl said he would only do the interview if DJ Ashba was there as well. And that interview is kind of hard to find on YouTube. There's a little snippet of it that VH1's put up, but I think it's available on some of the other video streaming sites that you guys can go check out. So let's go into our next piece of news. So we've got some more news about Guns N' Roses' show at Slane Castle. So we already know who all the opening acts are going to be for their Europe tour. We're still waiting on the North America tour, but there was an article about the Irish band that's actually going to be opening for Guns at Slane Castle. So the Irish band that's actually going to be opening up is a band called Otherkin, and their lead singer Luke Riley was actually interviewed, and he said it's a lifelong ambition of his to play at Slane Castle because he literally grew up only a stone's throw away from the famous venue. And he said, I remember telling my brother that one day I'll play Slane. And basically the other two supporting acts that Guns will be playing alongside will be Royal Blood and Mark Lanegan, and that's going to be a great show. I would love to see Royal Blood and Mark Lanegan. And Luke was also asked about whether he's a Guns N' Roses fan, and he said, I remember years ago standing in my cousin's bedroom in Toronto, and he's the biggest Guns N' Roses fan ever, and I remember seeing all the posters and Guns and records, and I said that one day I'll play Slane. So this isn't the first time that an Irish band has supported Guns N' Roses. So when Guns played Slane Castle back in 1992, a band called Little Funhouse had the honor of actually opening up for Guns. And it was actually around that time that Little Funhouse was actually signed to Geffen Records as well. So let's go on to our next piece of news. So we've got some Matt Sorum news. So as you guys know, he's got that band Kings of Chaos, which is basically a super group. And he's actually going to be playing the Long Beach Grand Prix this year. So it's actually coming up really soon. So the concert's actually going to be taking place later this month. And there's a whole article basically interviewing Matt Sorum about the upcoming show. So he said it's going to be a hits-filled set. And he said they're going to be playing the best of the best songs of all the bands. And, it's likely they're going to be playing, Rebel Yell, maybe ZZ Top's Legs, Fire Woman, and Love Removal Machine from The Cult, or even Paradise City from Guns N' Roses. And Matt Sorum said, you're going to get a kick-ass rock and roll show that goes perfect with the racing show. It's a perfect match of fast cars and great rock and roll. So the concert is part of the Grand Prix weekend of music that starts Friday night with Tocata Light Fiesta Latin music concert. And if you guys want to read more about it, there's actually a link in the description box down below. And the concerts that usually happen at this racing event attract about 8,000 race ticket holders per show. But for Saturday's 6 p.m. headlining show, that number could be much higher. So the actual CEO of the Grand Prix Association said they're expecting a crowd of up to 10,000 people thanks to the big names on stage, including Matt Sorum. They're also going to be having Billy Idol, Billy Gibbons, and Chester Bennington on stage as well. So go check that out, guys. Let's go on to our next piece of news. So we have some pretty big Brian Johnson news. So everybody's been wondering, what's going on with his hearing? Is he going to come back to AC/DC? Well, I don't really know the answer to that question, and neither does anybody else except probably Brian Johnson and the guys from AC/DC. But Brian Johnson's apparently going to be hosting a new TV show called Brian Johnson Life on the Road. So it's going to premiere on April 28th on Sky Arts on the UK. And this is according to Team Rock. So the travel style program will feature Brian Johnson offering an exclusive take on one aspect of rock and roll life, live performance, touring, and being on the road. And the singer will interview a different musician each episode, with The Who's Roger Daltrey set for the first installment, Metallica's Lars Ulrich, Pink Floyd's Nick Mason, Sting, Def Leppard's Joe Elliott, and Robert Plant are also set to appear. And Elliott described his appearance on the show, saying Johnson flew to Dublin for an episode. I was quite humbled to be invited to do it because the guests that he has on the show are quite extraordinary. We spent about 8 hours shooting the show. We were walking around the Temple Bar area of Dublin in the rain and the wind. It was cold and horrible, but we did spend most of it indoors at the Porterhouse HQ, where he sampled Joe Elliott's Louder Beer. So Brian Johnson's life on the road will also follow Johnson's foray into radio last year when he hosted an interview program called The Producers, which featured in-depth interviews with the studio masters. So the musician moves into media come after, of course, Brian was forced to step aside from AC/DC. And, we know last June that Brian Johnson actually announced that there's this new inner ear technology that's made him hopeful that he'll one day be able to perform live again. However, it's still unclear if that would be with AC/DC or maybe with another band. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I would love to see this show because I'm a huge Brian Johnson fan. But as we get more AC/DC news, guys, I will let you know. Let's go on to our next piece of news. So we have a picture of Duff. This is pretty recent from earlier this week. So it looks like his family was at Cabo San Luca this past week, just enjoying some time off from the road. And let's go on to our last two pieces of news, which are mostly just rare pictures. So I want to thank Tim on Facebook for sending these to me. So this one is a picture of, I think, Brain, Robin Fink, and Richard Fortas. Now, I don't know whose kid that is. I'm guessing it's probably Robin Fink's. And then we've also got this picture, which I'm not sure when it was taken. I'm guessing it's 1992 to 94. Some people have said, it's 1999 or 2000. It's definitely not that time because Axl had a different hair color and he looked a little bit heavier and he was actually wearing a jersey at that actual show. So if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Gilby Clarke and his band, the Star Effers, were playing a club, and I think Axl just showed up and sang a couple Stone songs. And it was like the first time people had really seen Axl out and about in like 2 years since his arrest. And I think this one was probably taken around 92-ish, I would say. You can see that there's Teddy in the background as well as Dizzy Reed as well. So maybe it was like someone's birthday party or just like a jam backstage. I was always under the assumption that like Axl never hung out with the rest of the bandmates, but I think maybe that's been overblown over over all the years that we've heard the stories about the band. But that does it for today's news, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, hit the like button if you enjoyed the contents of this video. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on all things related to Guns N' Roses. And be sure to follow me on social media. The links to my Facebook and Twitter are down below. I'm posting a ton of exclusive pictures that you guys have probably never seen before on my Twitter and Facebook. So make sure you guys go like them and follow me on those social media pages. Take care.